All right. Ready to kind of shake things up, like how we think about work.
I like that. Shake things up.
Today we're going deep on rework.
Ah, yes. Rework by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson. Those are the brains behind 37 Signals. Or, well, you probably know them better now as Basecamp.
Yeah, exactly. And these guys, they build, I mean, really like an amazing tech company, but they did it their own way, kind of threw out that old school business playbook, you know?
Oh, absolutely. They really went against the grain. It's pretty refreshing, actually, like this whole idea that bigger is always better, you know?
Yeah.
They really challenged that.
Yeah, they don't buy into all that hype. In fact, they made a really strong case that small, like staying small, can actually be, well, it can be not just good, but really powerful.
Powerful. I like that.
Yeah, powerful. And they get you thinking right off the bat. I mean, one of the first things that really jumped out at me was this idea that, you know, that whole traditional 9 to 5 grind, that climb the corporate ladder thing, it's not the only way anymore.
Like, it's not the only path to success.
Right. Do you think technology has just, I don't know, like completely changed all the rules of the game?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they make it really clear. Technology has made it possible for, well, practically anyone to start a business. Like things that used to be, I don't know, like super expensive or really complicated to do. It's all, I mean, now if you have a laptop and
Wow.
you've got Wi-Fi, you can do it.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It really is.
And they even say you don't need to be working like crazy hours to make it all happen.
Yeah, they're not about that whole like hustle all the time mentality.
Yeah, that's a big one these days. Everyone's got to be hustling, right?
Right,
Huh.
exactly.
But they actually suggest that, like 10 to 40 hours a week, that's all you need.
Yeah. They're all about working smarter, not necessarily harder. You know, like they really emphasize being focused. They say that short bursts of like really concentrated work, that can actually be more productive than just like grinding away for hours and hours.
I think a lot of people hearing that are like, tell me more.
Yeah, right. I mean, especially these days, it feels like everyone's just like always on, you know, always connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say someone out there is feeling stuck. They hate their job,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they've always dreamed of starting their own thing, but they don't know where to begin. What's the takeaway from rework? Like what would you say to them?
Well, I think the big message is that, you know, those side hustles that everybody talks about, they're not just some like, you know, pipe dream. They can be a really smart way to kind of test the waters.
Yeah.
Like you can keep that security of a steady job while you're building something on the side. That's something that you're really passionate about. And the cool thing is with remote work and everything, like you don't even need a fancy office to make it happen.
It's like the possibilities are endless these days.
They really are. It's pretty exciting.
It is. And this is just the beginning. Like rework really, it just gets more interesting the further you go, because Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they don't hold back. They start taking on these classic business myths. You know, like for example, remember when everybody was obsessed with that saying, learn from your mistakes?
Oh yeah. Like that was the mantra for a while.
And they're like, nope, that's overrated.
I love that they actually say that, like learning from your mistakes. They're like, it's overrated.
Mm.
Because their point is, if you get too hung up on those failures, you know, you're gonna stay stuck.
Right. Yeah. Dwelling on the past.
Exactly. They'd rather see you build on what's already working. You know, adapt, move forward, keep things moving. And they're also pretty skeptical of those like elaborate long-term plans.
Right. Like who can even predict what's going to happen in 5 years?
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's practically impossible. So they say long-term plans, they're basically just guessing.
Yeah, it's like trying to predict the future, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like they're really all about being flexible and being able to kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, adaptability is key for them. And you know, that ties into their whole view on workaholism too.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about that.
So they see it not as like, you know, some badge of honor, like, oh, I work so hard, I work all the time. They see it as a sign that maybe you're not managing your time very well. And they even go so far as to question that word, entrepreneur.
Yeah, that word gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
But they say anyone who starts a business, they're more of they call them a starter.
A starter.
Yeah. It's like someone who just takes action. You know, they build something new.
I like that. It feels a lot more, I don't know, like approachable than entrepreneur.
Yeah. It's less intimidating, for sure.
Yeah. Less pressure. Now, one of the most interesting ideas in rework, and it's a little bit of a head scratcher at first.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
It's this concept of, get this, Embracing constraints.
Embracing constraints. Okay, yeah, that's a new one.
Right. Are they actually saying that limitations are like a good thing?
I know, right? It sounds a little crazy, but they actually make a pretty compelling argument. They're saying constraints, they're like advantages in disguise.
Hmm.
Because when you have limited resources, you have to get creative.
Hmm. Okay, I see where they're going with this.
Right. It forces you to really focus on what matters. And they say that can lead to some really innovative solutions. I mean, they use some really interesting examples to illustrate this.
Yeah, they do. Like they talk about how like prisoners, they have almost no resources.
Right. They have very limited resources.
Yeah. But they've created some really incredible things.
Oh, absolutely. And they also talk about like The Price is Right, that TV show.
That's been running forever.
Right. I mean, it's been on for decades.
Yeah.
And it has this like surprisingly simple format,
Hmm.
but it works. And then there's Southwest Airlines.
Okay. What about them?
Well, they only fly Boeing 737s.
Oh, wow. Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that might seem like a limitation,
Yeah.
but it actually streamlines their entire operation.
Okay. So instead of it being a hindrance, that constraint actually becomes a competitive edge.
Exactly. Pretty brilliant, huh?
That's fascinating. So how did 37 Signals, how do they apply this idea of constraints to their own company?
So they did it in a couple of ways. They kept their team small. They really concentrated on just a few key features for their products.
Right.
And they only worked on one product at a time.
Wow. That's really focused.
It was. It was all about staying agile and avoiding, unnecessary complexity.
Which brings us to another big takeaway from rework. The power of saying no. I mean, is that even allowed in the business world? Isn't it like, isn't the customer always right?
Right. That's what we always hear.
Yeah.
But Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they really challenge that assumption. They make a really strong case that's saying, no, it's essential if you want to stay focused on your vision.
Okay, so sometimes you have to say no to requests, even if they're coming from customers.
Sometimes, yeah. If those requests were going to pull you away from what your product, what your service is really all about, you have to be willing to say no. And they have some good examples of companies that have actually succeeded by doing this.
Oh, really? Like who?
Like, for example, ING Direct. It's a
Okay.
bank that they grew really rapidly by offering a very limited, like narrow range of products and services. So they didn't try to be everything to everyone. They just focused on doing a few things really well, and that made them super efficient.
Okay, so sometimes saying no is actually a way of saying yes to what really matters.
Exactly. It's about priorities.
Now, once you've built something great, you've got your product, you've got your service, how do you get the word out? Like, what do they say about marketing and promoting your work?
This is another area where their advice is a little bit unexpected. They actually say, embrace obscurity in the beginning. Like, don't be afraid to fly under the radar for a while.
Fly under the radar.
Yeah. Use that time to really experiment, refine your product, find your voice, do it all without the pressure of, the public watching your every move.
So it's kind of like a band they're playing in those small clubs before they hit it big.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're honing their craft, getting their act together. Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they compare it to retailers. You know how they use test markets.
Yeah. See how things go before they launch big.
Exactly. And Broadway shows, they do out-of-town tryouts.
Right. Before they go to Broadway.
Right. It's that low-pressure environment where you can experiment, you can work out the kinks before you go big time. And they're also huge believers in building an audience through content.
Okay. Content marketing, that's a big one.
It is. And it works. I mean, think about 37 Signals themselves.
Yeah, they've done a really good job with that.
They have. Their signal versus noise blog, that's been a huge part of their success.
Okay. So we've covered technology changing the game, embracing those constraints, the power of no. But no business is built alone, right? You got to have a team.
Definitely.
What insights do Fried and Heinemeier Hansson offer when it comes to building a great team?
Well, their advice on hiring is really specific. And it's a little unconventional, to say the least. Like, their first piece of advice is do the job yourself first.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Before you even think about hiring someone else to do it yourself.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Right. Because how can you effectively manage someone if you don't actually understand the work?
Right. Okay.
And they also say don't hire until you absolutely have to.
Okay, so you got to be drowning in work.
Pretty much. Like you have to be totally overwhelmed and you have to know exactly what you're looking for in a candidate. But here's the real kicker. They think resumes are a waste of time.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. Seriously, no resumes.
No resumes. They think they're useless because they believe in looking beyond those lists of, skills and experience.
Okay, so what are they looking for?
They want to find people who are passionate about your company, like people who are excited to be a part of what you're building.
It's about shared values.
Exactly. It's about that connection.
Yeah.
And they also place a high value on, believe it or not, writing skills. They think clear writing equals clear thinking.
Which is important no matter what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're big advocates for what they call managers of one.
Managers of one.
Yeah, it's basically people who can set their own goals, get things done without needing someone to, constantly look over their shoulder.
Independent workers.
Exactly. People who can they take ownership and they run with it.
Sounds like a dream team.
It does, doesn't it?
All right, so you've got the dream team. How do you create a great company culture,
Right. Like, how do you build that environment where everybody thrives, everybody feels valued?
Yeah, exactly.
Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they believe that culture, it's not something you can just, manufacture with ping pong tables or slogans.
It's got to be more than perks.
Way more. It's about how people actually behave, how they treat each other.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And they're big on trust, autonomy, giving people that sense of responsibility. And they hate that whole rock star mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's all about celebrating just a select few. They think everyone on the team is important.
Yeah.
And they extend this philosophy to communication, too.
Okay. So how does that work? How does communication play into this?
Well, they're really mindful about the language that's used in the workplace. Like, they even caution against using certain words. They call them four-letter words.
Four-letter words. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What kind of words are we talking about?
Oh, not the kind you might be thinking. We're talking about words like need, must, can't, easy, just, only, and fast.
Okay. I don't really see those as four-letter words, but okay.
I know, right? But they argue that those words, they create a kind of like adversarial dynamic. They shut down conversation.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I can kind of see how those words could add tension.
Right. It's like they create this pressure cooker environment.
Yeah.
And they also really discourage overuse of ASAP.
Oh, yeah. Everybody wants everything ASAP.
I know, but they say it just creates unnecessary stress and it doesn't actually help to clarify, what's really important.
Yeah. Okay, so clear, respectful communication, no unnecessary urgency. Got it.
Exactly.
Now, what about taking action? Is that a big theme in rework?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of the core principles, I'd say. Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they believe that inspiration, it's powerful, it's a driving force, but it's also fleeting. Like, if you get a great idea, you got to act on it right away. Don't wait for the perfect moment. It might never come.
It's like, just go for it. Dive in and figure it out as you go.
Exactly. Because overthinking, overplanning, it can actually stifle your creativity.
Makes sense.
It's all about taking those first steps.
It's about progress, not perfection.
You got it.
Yeah.
It really is about having that courage to just take those first steps, even if you're not sure, even if it feels a little messy. Now they also have some pretty interesting thoughts about competition. It's almost like they don't even care what the competition is doing.
Yeah, that's true. I noticed that too. They don't seem like too worried about what everyone else up to. Do you think that's, I don't know, is that a mistake, or is there something to that approach?
I think it's more strategic than a mistake. Like they actually advise against, constantly comparing yourself to others or getting caught up in this race to outdo everyone else.
Okay, so why do they think that's a bad idea?
Well, they believe it's a distraction. Like, it can actually lead to a weaker product or service if you're too focused on what everyone else is doing.
Okay, so instead of playing that game, like trying to keep up with the Joneses, what do they suggest?
They say focus on your own vision.
Yeah.
Like, do what you believe is right for your product, for your customers. Don't worry about, what the other guy is doing. They argue that real differentiation, it comes from putting your heart and soul into your work.
Yeah.
Like letting your own personality, your own values, letting that come through.
Yeah. I really like how they compare it to a musician's style. They say tone is in your fingers.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what guitar you play. You can always hear that individual's like unique sound.
That's so true. It's about finding your own voice, your own, way of doing things. Don't be afraid to stand out. Because trying to be everything to everyone, it just makes you bland.
Yeah.
You become forgettable.
They have a point. I mean, that you can't please everybody all the time.
You can't. And you shouldn't try to. Like they actually talk about some companies that have really nailed this idea of being different.
Oh, really? Like who?
Like Zappos.
Zappos, okay.
Yeah. They're known for their amazing customer service. Like it's over the top.
Yeah. I've heard about that.
And then there's Polyface Farms.
Polyface Farms, okay. I'm not familiar with them.
So they've built a following by really, really focusing on sustainable farming practices.
Okay.
So these businesses didn't become successful by, offering the most features or the lowest prices. They succeeded because they put their values, their personality, they put that into everything they do.
So it's not about being better, it's about being different.
Yes, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means, taking a stand, calling out the competition.
Oh, really? Like, get a little aggressive.
A little bit. Yeah, a little healthy competition. Like they even mention Audi, for example.
Okay.
Audi, they position themselves as the fresh alternative to those, old luxury brands like Rolls-Royce and Mercedes.
Right. Okay.
And who can forget Apple's Mac versus PC ads?
Right.
I mean, they were not afraid to really draw a line in the sand.
So they're not totally shying away from competition. They're approaching it in a different way.
That's right. It's more about being true to yourself, to your vision,
right,
than constantly worrying about what the other guy's doing.
Right.
But they do make this interesting point that having a clear enemy, even if it's not a specific competitor, but it's just like an industry or a way of thinking, having that enemy can really help you to focus. It helps you to tell a more compelling story.
Interesting. So they're not saying be obsessed with the competition.
No.
But be aware of what they're doing and maybe use that to fuel your own vision.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like don't waste your energy worrying about what they're doing. Just focus on your own work. And trust that your unique approach, it's going to attract the right people. It's like running your own race.
Mm-hmm.
You can't win if you're constantly looking over your shoulder, to see what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great analogy, and it's something that we can all apply to our lives, not just in business.
Right.
Now, speaking of running your own race, they also have some really interesting ideas about productivity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They really seem to champion this idea of getting things done quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, they have a real allergy to overthinking.
Overthinking.
And analysis paralysis.
Yeah, getting stuck in that loop.
But all about making decisions and taking action, even if it means you might make a few mistakes along the way.
See, that's where I get a little bit hesitant.
Oh yeah, why?
Because isn't there a risk of making rash decisions if you move too quickly?
I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're suggesting that you just make decisions without thinking. It's more about avoiding that trap of overthinking and second guessing yourself to the point where you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
You're not making any progress.
Okay, so it's about momentum.
Yeah.
And learning as you go.
Exactly. Yeah. And this ties into their whole idea of being a curator.
A curator.
Yeah. They talk about this idea of ruthlessly editing, eliminating anything that's not essential. It's all about that less is more philosophy.
I'm starting to see a real pattern here, focus, simplicity, action. It's about cutting through all that noise, all that clutter, and just getting to the heart of what really matters.
Yes, you're getting it. They even say it's better to build half a product, not half-assed product. What do you think they mean by that?
Okay, half a product, not a half-assed product. I think what they're saying is it's better to have a smaller product that's really well executed than a larger product that's just kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
It's about being intentional, making those tough choices about what to include and what to leave out.
Yes, exactly. And they have this great phrase. They say, start at the epicenter.
The epicenter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the epicenter of a hot dog stand?
I mean, it seems pretty obvious. It's the hot dog.
Yes.
It's not the fancy toppings or the cool design of the cart. It's the hot dog itself.
Exactly. So focus on that core element. That helps you to prioritize, what really matters. And they also talk about ignoring the small details, especially early on.
Yeah, they argue that getting bogged down in all those little details can just lead to delays and disagreements.
Yeah.
It's better to get that big picture right, and then you can worry about the finer points later. It reminds me of how Pixar works. Like they encourage their animators to focus on the core story and the characters before they get lost in all the details.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Yeah.
It's about not letting, perfection be the enemy of good.
Right.
Get the foundation right, then you can add those finishing touches. And this ties into their emphasis on setting deadlines and shipping products quickly.
Yeah.
They believe that long projects, they can really drain morale. So it's often better to get something out there, even if it's not perfect, and then iterate,
Yeah.
get feedback, make those changes.
Yeah, I can see how that approach would really keep everyone, motivated, and it would prevent things from getting stale. It's all about forward momentum. Do they have any other interesting analogies for this idea?
Well, they compare it to drug dealers.
Drug dealers, okay.
Yeah. They say drug dealers, they're willing to give away a small taste for free.
Oh, okay.
Because they know their product is so good that people are going to come back for more.
That's a very provocative comparison, but I think I see what they're getting at. It's about letting people experience the value of your product firsthand instead of just, telling them about it.
Exactly. It's about showing, not telling. And this connects to their broader view of marketing, which is that, it's not just about advertising. It's not just about PR. It's about everything you do.
Right. They have a point. Because every interaction that a customer has with your company, whether it's, answering the phone or sending an invoice, all of those things can shape their impression of you.
It all matters. And they really encourage businesses to be authentic, to embrace their imperfections.
Okay.
Because trying to be perfect, it can actually make you seem less trustworthy.
Yeah, it's like people can smell a phony a mile away, They want to see the real you, flaws and all.
Exactly. Embrace those quirks. Embrace those imperfections. Because it makes you more relatable, more memorable. Now, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about something that every business, I think, dreads, which is damage control.
Damage control, oh yeah.
So how do Fried and Heinemeier Hansson advise handling those inevitable crises?
That's a great question, because I think we've all been there at some point.
We have.
Those moments where everything seems to be going wrong.
Yeah.
What's the best way to navigate those situations?
Well, Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they're big believers in transparency. Like when something goes wrong, own it. Don't try to, hide it or spin it. That just makes things worse.
Yeah, it seems like that almost always backfires. Like people can see right through it.
They can. So yeah, be honest, be upfront, and respond quickly.
Okay, so authenticity is key, even when it's painful.
Especially when it's painful.
Right. Do they give any examples of companies that have handled crises well, or maybe not so well?
Oh yeah, they actually talk about the Exxon Valdez oil spill.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's a classic example of how not to handle a crisis.
Yeah, that was a big one.
It was, because Exxon, their response was really delayed, and they were really evasive, and it just made everything so much worse, and it really hurt the reputation.
Yeah, it seems like they were trying to sweep it under the rug, and that never works.
It never does. Now, in contrast, they talk about Ashland Oil.
Ashland Oil, okay.
Their CEO, he immediately took responsibility for an oil spill that they had. He promised to clean it up, and he was really proactive about communicating with the public.
So it sounds like they were really transparent about the whole thing.
They were, and that really helped to minimize the damage, and it even generated some goodwill.
So it's not just about what you do, it's about how you communicate it.
Exactly. Like honesty, transparency, those things go a long way.
They do.
And when you do apologize, make sure it's a real apology.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, Fried and Heinemeier Hansson, they really can't stand those non-apology apologies.
Oh yeah, the I'm sorry you feel that way.
Exactly. The ones that don't actually take any responsibility.
Right, let's just make things worse.
They do. So a genuine apology, it takes ownership of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It expresses remorse, and it outlines the steps that you're going to take to to prevent the problem from happening again.
It's about making things right.
It is.
Now, switching gears a little bit, they also talk about putting everyone on the front lines when it comes to customer service.
Yes. They believe that everyone in the company, regardless of their role, should have some direct contact with customers.
Even if it's just, answering a few emails or phone calls.
Even if it's just that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is that so important? I can see how it might be, I don't know, a little overwhelming for some employees.
Yeah, for some people who aren't used to dealing with customers directly,
Mm-hmm.
but the reason they think it's important is because it builds empathy.
Empathy, okay.
It helps everyone to understand, how people are actually using the product, what their experiences are.
Yeah.
And it really helps to break down those silos.
Yeah, those walls between departments.
Exactly. And it helps everyone to see the bigger picture.
Right. Because the more layers there are between the people who are building the product and the people who are using the product, it's harder to get that clear feedback.
Yeah. It's like that game of telephone.
Right.
The message just gets distorted as it goes from person to person. So having that direct interaction, it really keeps those lines of communication, open and honest.
Okay, break down the walls, let everyone experience that customer journey. I like it.
It's a good approach.
What about dealing with negative feedback? Because that's inevitable. Do they offer any advice on how to handle that?
They do. They say stay calm,
Yeah.
stay measured. Even when you're getting, some pretty harsh criticism,
Okay.
don't panic. Don't make any knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah.
Based on a few initial responses.
All right.
Give people time to adjust to change.
Because that's hard. Change is hard.
It is. And so it's easy to get defensive when you're being criticized. But sometimes you just got to take a step back
Right.
and see the bigger picture.
Right.
Because often those initial negative reactions, they fade away once people have had a chance to really experience the change for themselves.
It's about having a little faith. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on one more theme that really resonated with me, and that's the importance of inspiration and taking action.
Oh, yes. Inspiration.
They seem to have a lot to say about staying motivated and making things happen.
They do.
Yeah.
They believe that inspiration it's such an amazing driving force,
Yeah.
but it can also be fleeting.
Yeah.
You gotta seize it when you feel it, or it's gonna slip away.
Don't wait for the perfect time to start. Just dive in and figure it out as you go.
That's it. Because overthinking and overplanning, that can actually kill inspiration.
Yay.
They'd much rather see you, start small,
Mm-hmm.
build momentum, and then adjust course as you learn and grow.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And they also emphasize celebrating those small victories along the way.
Oh, the small wins.
The small wins, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that helps you to stay energized, and it reminds you that you're making progress. Even if the finish line still seems, miles away, acknowledge those wins, no matter how small they are.
Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into REWORK by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson. We explored their unconventional approach to work, from embracing constraints to the power of saying no to the importance of building a strong, culture.
It's a book that really challenges us to question those assumptions and to find a better way to work. It encourages us to simplify, focus on what truly matters, and take action.
Love it. And if you're interested in learning more about their unique approach to work, I highly recommend checking out Rework and their Signal versus Noise blog. It's full of great insights and inspiration. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep reworking.